Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's live session, the CMO's Guide to Brand Milestones. My name is Chris Hannon. I'm on the marketing team at Frontify. We are indeed live. It's 11 a.m. here in New York, where I'm based. Good morning to everyone in the US who's joining us. We also had quite a few people across the Atlantic, especially in the UK, who registered. So good afternoon to all of you. Welcome wherever you're coming from. We have a great session for you today. The duration of this webinar, I think it's going to depend on you. If we have a lot of questions from you, which we're hoping, we could run up to 45 minutes. If not, we can wrap this up around 30 minutes. So we'll see. But we do want to hear from you. So the chat is open. You can chat things to us if you can't hear us or you can't see something, things like that. But also we want your feedback and comments. There's also a Q&A tab, so you can also ask a question. We can upvote questions. You can comment on questions. So please, throughout, I'll be monitoring this stuff. If I look off to my right, it's because I'm looking at the chats and questions. So I'll be monitoring. If I find something in the moment to ask, I'll go ahead and do that. Let's just check the chat already, see if we have anything. Okay, good. No issue so far, so that's good. Before we get started, I want to just quickly walk you through a few things that you're going to get for registering today. So anytime someone registers, fills out a form on our website, we want to make sure we're giving them as much value as possible. So we'll be giving you the survey results. Obviously, we're going to walk through some of those. We have two amazing expert panelists, so we're going to get their insights and you'll have a chance to ask them questions. So please take advantage of this. They're both so experienced and great. So excited for that. After this, we'll send you the full recording and the full report. There's a lot of stuff in the full report that we're not going to cover today, so we'll send that to you afterwards. We're also going to give you early access to this new report that we're going to launch in August, September with Harvard Business Review. I don't even think I'm supposed to be telling you this yet, but it's on the value of long-term brand building. I've seen the initial results and it's really, really good. So we'll send that to you. You don't have to register or, fill out another form for that. And then some bonus content. We just have a new blog article. You may have seen it. It says, it's called Stop Firing CMOs. They're about to become indispensable. And then we have another report on unlocking content efficiency that we're going to share with you as a bonus as well. So let's get to today's panelists. I'm very lucky and fortunate that these two are here with us today. We have Lindsey Slaby and Shena Patel. I'm going to let Lindsey go ahead and introduce herself first. But Lindsey, welcome and thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Okay, so myself, what do I do? So I would say I've run my own company called Sunday Dinner for about 11 years, which is crazy to think about. And I'm essentially an external chief of staff to CMOs. So any form of advisement across, however we're thinking about marketing. But I thought I would really quickly give a hit to sort of my Frontify story as well. I think one of the things what happens when you come in as a new CMO is you're looking at the brand, the assets, where is everything? Like, what is everyone doing? Why do we still have our brand guidelines in a PDF somewhere that's 400 pages and nobody looks at? And I help evaluate a lot of those tools. And I think, Frontify is one of the tools that has been the most premium and really designed with, I think, how the client's going to use things, as well as how the designers need to operate with unique fonts and things like that. And so I'm super excited to obviously work with you guys more closely and see the evolution of the product, because I think it really superpowers a CMO to what they can do. And I know we'll get into all of that, but that's my spiel. Oh, and I'm in New York.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind words too, Lindsey. And then Shena Patel, welcome. Also in New York, trying to stay cool during this heat wave. Thank you so much for being here. I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the group too.
Sure. I'm Shena, and yes, I am trying to stay cool here in New York. I am a creative director, and I started my career as a copywriter. So brand voice, storytelling, narrative, all of those things are incredibly near and dear to me. And I have been in-house agency side, full-time, freelance, you name it. I've run the gamut. I started at a brand called Tiffany as a copywriter. So I really I like to call it the mothership of brand voice and brand identity and integrity. I cut my teeth there, and now, many years later, I am a fractional chief creative officer. I work with C-suites, a lot of CMOs, they're my best partners, to sort of collaborate and build the brand voice, narrative, identity, help them really, sort of flex and be agile. And as Lindsey said, sort of keep that cohesive story together and resonating with customers. So I'm new to Frontify. Chris and I met very recently, and I'm super excited to be here to talk about brand milestones, one of my favorite topics.
Thank you, Shena. If anyone has any questions already for either of these two, go ahead and pop them in the Q&A box, and then I will share the link in the follow-up too to their LinkedIn if you want to follow them. I definitely recommend you follow and connect. And if you want to ask more about how they can help your brand, please do. I will do that in the follow-up. So real quick, just for some context, so why brand milestones? At Frontify, people reach out to us for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes they need a DAM, a digital asset management tool. Sometimes they're building a corporate brand portal. Sometimes they need both. Sometimes they just need to improve overall efficiency. But a lot of times we found there's some sort of larger brand initiative going on with like the brand in the business. So it could be a rebrand, a brand refresh, a merger and acquisition, a spin-off, an expansion, things like that. And so as a marketing team this year, at the end of last year, as we're planning for this year, we kind of have all these different things on our little whiteboard. And in the past, we've kind of focused on one, like, oh, let's do a rebranding campaign for the whole year. This year, we looked at them a little bit more holistically. We're like, all of these things are kind of different milestones along your brand evolution and your brand journey. And so we thought that was kind of interesting. We started asking more questions, and we turned those questions into a survey, and we conducted a survey with senior marketers. Just recently, we've put together this survey and report. So I'll quickly give you a little overview of the survey. Over 100 senior marketers. This was in March, April is when it happened. It was split roughly across the US, UK, and DACH. Why those three regions? That's where Frontify has offices, although we do work with all companies all around the globe. We did have, it's not just CMOs. In my past role, I worked for, it was like $1 billion publicly traded company with thousands of employees, dozens of brands. And the most senior person in marketing was a director of marketing. And they'd been there for over 15 years, and they didn't even have a senior director title. So we know different companies have different structures and titles. So really, we wanted people who were decision makers with marketing strategy and budget. So those were two qualifying questions. And so you can see the breakdown there. And we did focus this one on larger companies, over 1,000 employees. A lot of you who registered are at smaller companies, challenger brands. I think this content is still going to be super relevant for you, but just wanted to make that note. And so are we ready for the survey findings? Lindsey, Shena, chat?
Yes, go forth. Go forth.
So one of our first takeaways we did is marketers agree on the importance of brand evolution and their role in shaping it. So this was we asked on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being strongly disagree, 5 being strongly agree, rate these 5 following statements. And we said brands must continually evolve to stay relevant. An important part of my job is overseeing our brand's evolution. I'm satisfied with how our brand is evolving. Evolving our brand will be a critical objective going forward. And then here we snuck in this milestone language. The evolution of a brand consists of big and small milestones. This is what we were hoping to see. This is what we expected, that people would be in overwhelming agreement. But I'm curious, Lindsey and Shena, anything that stands out here? I remember we were talking about, brand evolution. That could mean a lot of different things. So I'm curious to get your take on any of this. And also the chat, please, anything you agree with, disagree with, or have questions, we want to hear from you. But go ahead, Lindsey and Shena, what do you think?
I can direct to Shena. I mean, I think one of the things we talked about yesterday is also being really clear about defining what brand is. I knew she was going to say that. I took it from you. But like, what do we actually mean in this moment? You know, sometimes I think people feel like it's just the visual expression and the voice, versus a lot of the other attributes and the importance of how we're actually using our marketing levers. I find a lot of brands get very performance oriented, not performance media per se, but maybe overly promotional, especially in this moment that we're going into. And to caveat a little bit of maybe my point of view for the rest of the session is, you know, deep in annual planning for 2026 and just came back. I'm making this have a timestamp now, but from Cannes Lion, and I think there's so many valuable things that we're thinking about in terms of how do we evolve our brand and how do we make sure it doesn't get lost in what's coming. And so I can, you know, add to that across this process, but I'll not take away from Shena.
Yeah, that is definitely a conversation we had. And also, I think what's important to define and to put parameters around is what do we mean by evolve? Because I think we have to first define what branding is and not limit it to just, you know, a logo and a tagline. But also when we say evolve, what do we mean by that? How are we building equity? How is a customer coming to relate to us and respond to us? And how are we making customers feel about us? And how are we building that relationship with our customers? When we say evolve, do we mean change the brand?
Yeah.
What are the parameters and how are we creating the cadence or the story or the experience for the customer and making it count?
Yeah. I'm gonna Chris, I told you we'd
Yeah.
never get through your slides, just to be clear. But
Yeah.
he's like, but I'm gonna answer one of the questions about measuring. I mean,
Yeah.
ooh, so hard, right? And I feel like on the brand side, we've always had to rely on these like, well, there's like, you know, how do we attribution is a mess right now, right? Facebook's wanting to take credit, Google's taking credit, etc. I have found, and as you were saying, for smaller brands, Tracksuit, if you guys aren't using it as well, is a tool that's been really helpful to give my team's feedback to the power of the brand. But measurement is a holistic team effort. And one of the things around that is trying to figure out how all the different departments and groups within your org are actually creating unified measurement without it becoming overwhelming, right? There are so many ways that you could actually create metrics to give brand attribution based on if you're running TV or if you have an experiential event happening in that moment that I think have modernized. And I'm really excited about that and those options. And Tracksuit's a great place to maybe start. That's a more traditional brand tracker, but that's a really great question about measurement, because again, it's always hard when we talk about investing in brand and fighting with CFOs.
Right.
Annika, that was your question in the chat. Thank you for asking. I think the survey we're working with Harvard Business Review gets into this as well. So we can share more on that in the next few months. But I think it's a great question that's always being asked. But that's one thing that we're going to try to answer in that. I do want to make sure everyone can see the results. We've gotten some feedback that some can, some can't. So any questions or any other chat thoughts on this one? We can move to the next result here. This next one is a little interesting. So marketers perceive differences in which brand milestones are most important to themselves, their C-suite, and their customers. So we chose these 7 milestones. Selfishly, a few of these were a little bit more relevant to us at Frontify. And then we included a few that were maybe more general, just to kind of see how things fit together. And so we asked 3 questions. We said, which do you, senior marketer, consider to be most important personally? Which do you perceive to be most important to the rest of your C-suite or leadership? And then we said, which do you perceive to be most important to your customers? And they could choose as many as they want. That's why these numbers don't add up to 100%. And you could see the marketers, what they thought was most important. Personally, in pink what they perceive the C-suite to be most important in black, and what they perceive to be most important to customers in the grayed out section. And what I was hoping to get out of this is I think there's always this like marketers and creative and brand, we're all kind of working over here. We have an idea what we need to do. You have the C-suite and leadership, maybe CEO, CFO, often not coming from a marketing, brand, or creative background. And so I think there's always this internal education that we have to do to prove the value of marketing and brand. And then it's like everyone says, oh, we have to be customer centric. And so like, what are we perceiving to be most important? And are we always keeping, you know, are there areas where we're maybe not focusing something that we think is more important to us, but maybe really, if we're being honest with ourselves, there's maybe things that are maybe more important to marketers or to customers. So Lindsey and Shena, what do you think? Anything that is confusing or you disagree with, or anything that resonates from this slide?
I actually thought that it was interesting that they all seem pretty tied, so to speak, except the incorporating brands from an M&A. And I was very curious about that result from
Yeah.
you know, from a marketer standpoint. And, you know, I was trying to wrap my head around it a little bit because you know, having worked at some big enterprises where you know, we've gone through periods of time where we've acquired new brands or you know, have tried to incorporate family of brand kind of approach. You know, there's always been a big push to sort of incorporate them. So I was interested in that. I didn't know if, you know, Lindsey, you had a point of view on that, or you've
I mean,
you
I think, you know, you have to look at, I would say, I've worked more recently on a lot of portfolio projects. And what's interesting, I think, and I maybe could speak to the Botox Allergan one since it's quite public. You know, what we were trying to do was really figure out like, how do we use the power of our portfolio to actually work with the other brands that we've been bringing in? And, you know, you had like this logo mix of things that were like all completely different and separate, and customers have no idea, consumer customers being, you know, the actual like practitioners as well as consumers didn't really know that they were all linked together. And I think that's also what's happened with like Bonvoy as well. And how do you bring maybe, you know, some of those strategies about thinking about putting loyalty at the heart is a great way to bring them together. But not every brand needs to actually feel like they are connected. And those are great discussions to have. And there's great teams, you know, to help you move through that. That's not exactly the M&A, but it does sometimes feel like things are super disconnected and they don't fit together. So I love thinking about how we can draw signals that they're together if you don't really want to necessarily tie them fully. I also felt in this slide, again, a lot of similar data, and that's what's going to come back, but there's a preciousness of launching a rebrand or a strategy or positioning. And sometimes I can't think of who the brands are that recently like celebrated this. Who was it? It was Kind Snacks, right? Not to say anything, you know, negative about that, but they like celebrated this huge rebrand online, and probably only marketers saw it, but we were like, you changed one thing, you know.
Right.
And again, I think thinking about milestones, there's things that are obviously, you know, these feel geared, you know, there are things that are really important for your team. And sometimes I think as CMOs, we get so focused on like the launch plan and how it's going and what we're putting out there that we do sometimes overlook how important the work that went in and the care to that is. And celebrating milestones internally, you know, maybe that kind one could have just been internal, but again, the people who worked on it probably love to see that. And it's unfortunate the way that it was reacted to, right? So it's a thought.
Yeah.
100%. I love, and I think one of the things we want to do with this campaign is like to celebrate the teams behind these brand milestones, because they are a lot of work.
They
It's a
are.
lot going on, and they should be celebrated, and it's the people behind it who are making this happen. So
Yeah.
that's another reason why and we'll get to like the emotional. There's a question we have coming up on the emotion side. There has been some great comments. You know, I think we knew we were gonna miss a million different milestones. So I think this is just an incomplete list for sure. And so I love that some people are sharing some other ones. For sure. We had some in the comments, like people could write what they thought a brand milestone was. Someone wrote like giving back to the community and having some sort of community element of the branding, which I think is a really great milestone as well, and I think is super important.
That's cool.
So yeah, we understand that. There's been some really cool comments here. Annika, again, for me, the most critical aspect for brand is on whether our ICP recognize the brand. Also, we grew through acquisition, so it's always a challenge to figure out which brands to promote corporate for some of the individual brands.
Yeah. We get in our own way, right? Like we think people are going to care about the whole, and again, I think that's why Bonvoy is super interesting because I feel like, you know, I don't necessarily think I'm staying at a Marriott anymore. I actually say Bonvoy. So, and it's a great case, obviously, and they had to invest a lot in that, right? If you decide you want to make your portfolio brand a big thing and it doesn't offer any value to a consumer, then no. But Bonvoy does offer a value. So I love that integration of loyalty being a piece, whether that's a Mondelez buying brands, you know, couponing power, using each other in different ways to grow is also a really great tactic too.
Awesome. Let's move to the next one here. This is the excitement, the emotion one. We said we found marketers feel excitement and optimism when working on brand milestones. So again, similar to the milestones, we did not cover every emotion possible. I chose these 8. One of my coworkers was like, "Why did you choose so many negative ones?" I didn't even realize I had done that. So I don't know if by default people just chose excitement and optimism. I like to think that they are actually excited and optimistic about working on this stuff. There's a little bit of caution, which is always important. And anxiety, I think, is always good too, because it shows maybe you're getting out of your comfort zone. But what do we think here? I would love in the chat too. I think this is one, if there's an emotion that you agree with or that you think you have felt when working on these milestones, you want to put it in there, that would be great in the chat.
It really depends. I think sometimes like if you were going back to a milestone being like, let's talk about what, you know, we're trying to really figure out like new AI workflows or something like that across the company. And that is a brand milestone as well, right? To me, I would be anxious about my internal teams accepting it, right? Like, and so I think there's like constantly, you know, you're scared about that. And if it's more like of a new visual identity, then I feel like you're like, you know, especially as a leader, we're really excited and we're optimistic about, and we stood behind it and we're going to do whatever. So obviously, like all of these things are just, I think from a CMO or a chief brand officer's perspective, like I'm making huge decisions and I know they're going to come with something. And sometimes I think when I'm advising my clients, like think about what that emotion might be and be ready for it, right? Because we have to make decisions. That's one of the worst things that happens with leaders. They market to everyone and they try to please everyone. So make a decision, but think about how the, you know, emotional reaction is going to come internally, externally, and just like prepare yourself for that as well.
Right. And I think creatives, I mean, when we're working on all of these types of initiatives, you know, what I try to tell my teams is to love the creative process and to focus on the work that they're doing and to try not to get into the sort of pessimism, frustration, and dread part of it, because those are things that they can't control in sort of their functional areas, right? We've got to do the work, right? We've got to come up with the ideas and the designs and the language and the concepts, and loving the creative process is about loving what you're making. So
Absolutely. Kelly just put a great one. She says, also a sense of relief. So much work and effort going to these milestones. It's sometimes a relief to just get it out the door. I couldn't agree more.
Sometimes it's years, right? You're like, oh my God, 3 years I've been working on this.
I will.
Sorry.
Really, really good. One thing too, for some background here that kind of influenced my thought on this, of including this question. We had I had a brand, like a big US bank, like had booked a demo. I don't think she knew what we did really. She just wanted to like talk to us about. And she said, like, how do I get my team to not have to do all this like brand admin work? And I think this is kind of tied to it, because it's like we can get bogged down with all these like little tiny requests, and it's hard to forget, or it's easy to forget like these bigger accomplishments that you're giving to your customers, to your business from the marketing and brand side. So I think this is something I'm hoping we can like, yeah, like excitement, optimism, a sense of
Yeah, I
relief.
mean, the in-house team that's working on brand doesn't want to be the brand police. They don't want to just be like,
Exactly.
oh, that font is off, that logo, right? And so that's where I would say, and this probably veers from this slide, but is a great, I mean, just something that's fresh on my mind is like, if you're working on your 2026 plan right now for where you go forward, like systems with a capital S, it should be a North Star. And what are those systems and how are, especially in the evolution of what's happening with voice and personality and creative, we're all exploring all sorts of things, but that can a lot, you have to let go a little bit and let people play, and there'll be a lack of control, but where do we bring that back? And that's where I think you have to figure out what your systems and tools are that everybody's using to bring us back to the right things. So, because people are excited, it's an exciting time to play with things, right? But they're going to try to change things. So I don't know if I'm expressing that the right way, but
100. Yeah, I think the last, some of the challenges, we can also speak on that. I think we could get into that. That could be a whole webinar probably.
yeah.
Uh, I just want to, there's some great comments coming in.
Oh my God,
Emotion,
all my friends. Hi, Fabio. Just kidding.
excitement, intrigue, curiosity, which means that the campaign creative needs to be differentiated, almost provocative. Confidence, you know, it's directly related to the confidence and expected impact of the milestone and approach. Thank you, Erica. When we are all aligned and focused, way more excitement versus when there's a sense of disconnect. 100%. I agree there. And then Fabio,
Hi.
I would remind my teams that for the consumer, the release of a brand or a campaign or new brand is the beginning of the conversation, while for us, it is the relief moment. Adding the post-launch milestone is a key part to make sure that we sustain the momentum. That's really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, like a new brand launch, right? We've rebranded something. I mean, I know, again, there's many different things that are milestones, but let's say that's it. We launch it and put it out and put media behind it, even like a new product going to market, and then that's it. And not everyone sees it, and not everyone understands it. So what's wave 2 of storytelling? What's wave 3? What's wave 4, right? What are those things that we need to continue to do to make sure that it sticks and it adapts? So I think that's maybe what you were
That's
also trying to say, Fabio.
100%. And we even see, I mean, that's just for the external. We find people do a rebrand and they have trouble getting it to stick internally. And that's why they'll come to us. And that's why they need like a brand portal. Cause it's like people are still using the old, it's like, what guys, we have this new,
Well,
and
the
so how do
PDF
they get
gets
using
outdated in like 20 seconds. Please, no more
exactly.
PDFs.
Exactly.
No.
All right. Thank you everyone for the comments and questions so far. We'll move on to this next one. Another takeaway here. Marketers say their departments need the most support with some of the most challenging brand milestones. So again, we stuck with these 7. We asked them 2 questions. We said, which one do you think is most challenging? And which one do you currently need most assistance with right now? This one, unlike the other, they could only choose one. So it doesn't mean that they don't think launching a new brand campaign isn't challenging, but we just asked what is most challenging. And so we kind of combined them here again to get a little hierarchy. And you can see at the top, expanding a brand into new market was both challenging, the most challenging, and then the second milestone that needed the most support among this group. So Lindsey and Shena, anything jump out to you here or in the audience? Any questions or comments or thoughts on this one? Especially that top one, expanding a
I can
brand
let
into new
Shena go if
market.
you want. I know you had a thought about this yesterday.
Um,
On the spot. She was, well, I mean, your question was like, well, what do we really mean by digital transformation?
that
True.
was a big question.
Okay,
What
yeah.
I'm always going to get back to the words. So what
Yes.
my big question was, what do we mean by digital transformation project in this context? And it could mean a lot of different things. So
Yeah.
Yes.
I was wondering if those surveyed were putting any texture around that and what kind of
Yeah.
support, because you need a different kinds of support around different kinds of digital transformation projects. So that was
Yeah.
interesting that came
Yeah.
And for
second.
each of these, we did ask if they chose, let's say the most challenging was working on a digital transformation project, or this is the most support. We did have
Mhm.
an open text answer. some of that will be in the full report that we share with everyone. A couple ones that I wrote down in my notes here. Some people said, like, why is a digital transformation project so challenging? They said bringing together various legacy systems with new technologies presents complex challenges. From the support side, they said that the marketing team needs a strong understanding of the overall digital transformation goals, so our efforts align with business priorities. So maybe there's a little disconnect there. And I think there's always a lot of like customer experience in there. Marketers need to focus on how they can enhance the customer experience through digital channels. There was also a recent VML report where I think the top focus area of digital transformation now, like 60% said AI. So that's a whole nother, because sometimes digital transformation, it feels like such an old thing and you've been hearing about it forever, but now it's like AI is a part of it and it's probably going to be
Yeah.
a big part. So
Systems and workflows. I think one of the things too is we get lost in strategy and in anything, right? Like we get lost when we get into the weeds on things, and digital transformation sometimes can be a lot of different technology. Like let's think about our modern tech stack, especially that we're all with AI. What are we using? And it gets really overwhelming. So many things do different things, and you're starting to think about, you know, you're getting a little bit too much in the weeds of their features versus maybe having one page where you're always at the top saying, these are the 3 things or the jobs to be done or the things I need to answer for my customers, right? And what is enabling us to do that? So customer facing and then internal facing. And that can always help you snap back maybe to, okay, this is why I want this product. Otherwise, we get into a place where, you know, sometimes organizations are like, I don't know, we have 200 tools and no one knows how to use them. And right now, like, we need systems adoption more than we ever have, in my opinion. And so you really need to have clarity around what this is enabling us to do so that people will adopt it. And there was a great question in here as well about the brand team from Emily versus the enablement managers. Great question, right? Again, sometimes we just launch and we're like, it's done, or we put it on the creative team to be like, now you're in charge of guideline police. I think for large corporations, I've actually always used a third party called Brand Active that has actually been the facilitator that rolls out all like massive, massive rebrands. And then they train and stay on throughout the process. But not everyone has the luxury for $100 million rebrand or whatnot. I think that assigning a person to do that is so important. And that person could also then become, this emerging set of roles we have around, I'm not sure if I'm going to say this right, but really the hands-on, the people who are really helping us with the automation tools and driving things. So that role could be multi-purpose, but the idea of when you're investing in a rebrand, putting in a line item for a human being internally as an FTE or a contractor that helps nurture the actual usage and lets people know where they can have more freedom too. Sometimes, rebrands are scary and you feel like I can't touch anything, or what if there's so many boxes that say no? How do I have fun with this? Because then you'll have a personal connection to it as a person internally, whether you're creative or a marketer. So that was a great question and something I think sometimes we all forget about.
Well, I think we don't take the time. I think what you're saying is absolutely right. We say it's like we push a button and imagine that everybody is all on board and none of them are onboarded, you
Yep.
know? So that has to be part of the process for all of this. Is anything we're trying to implement, part of the support is to get everybody internally aligned, and we skip that step often.
Yeah.
Really, really great. Debbie says, let's face it, digital brand transformation is hard. On digital platforms, nothing ever truly disappears. Every message, impression, and experience lingers. So the challenge isn't just creating something new, it's crafting a message powerful enough to overwrite the old and redefine the experience moving forward. One other thing too, Emily, to piggyback on what Lindsey was sharing and Shena, we find, especially after a rebrand or even just you just have your existing brand, and this is some of the insights we found in our HBR report, which the HBR team is going to be very pissed at me, I think, that I'm sharing this stuff already. But they said, like, how do you get people to be on brand? And there's like these, having like little brand committees within your company and having like little brand audits and brand champions within the company that you can bring on board to kind of be a champion within the different departments is also kind of an interesting thing that we found that people are leveraging. We'll move on, and then there are some questions here. We'll scroll back through if there's anything that we missed. But there's one more thing here. This is the last takeaway for this presentation. There's more in the report. But we said more than half of marketers agree on common brand challenges, whether it's for a brand milestone or not. So whether you're like actively working on a rebrand or expansion, we said on a scale of 1 to 5, again, 1 being strongly disagree, 5 being strongly agree, rate these statements. And we say, is it challenging for you to go to market with campaigns in a timely manner, manage your brand architecture, manage brand governance for global to local campaigns, increase organization-wide adoption of campaigns, and maintain brand consistency across omni-channel touch points? More than half, all of them said, yeah, like this, we agree that this is challenging. And I think it kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier, Lindsey, about how do you have guardrails for brand consistency and also have enough creative like variation? And I think that plays very much to the AI as well. Like, how do you set up guardrails and then have enough freedom for people to work off of it and be efficient, but also stay within? So I think it's interesting. I'd love to hear from the chat if any of these stand out, if you have questions specifically for Lindsey or Shena. But for now, what are your takeaways on here? Either one of you, if you want to jump in. Do one of these seem most challenging? Would you say one of these is the most challenging to you, or at least from what you hear?
I mean, some of these are just common to the job. I think sometimes global to local is hard because it's all, everyone has different org structures and who's setting the creative guidelines for that. And how do you, that's basically incentive structures and different teams. And, some of my clients have like a center of excellence in the US, and, the way their process is working might be that they're hoping that the main creative guide is there, and then it gets just sort of translated, right? That doesn't work, right? It just doesn't work, and it's hard. Now we can do a lot more, obviously, with tools, but the way people react to a brand in a culture that's Southeast Asia or a Latin country, advertising, marketing, and everything is so different. So we've been challenged with this, right? And you'll see big businesses like Diageo or Coke constantly change that model. A new CMO comes in and goes, no, I want to hold on to it. No, let it go. No, hold on. And I think that's an important thing for us to think of with new tools. And again, everything goes back to how do we make sure that as we're evolving and as we can move faster and as we have all these things, the brand, the voice, the actual core of it doesn't get lost, but we're allowing ourselves to do so much more. Like there's so much more opportunity to be able to deploy our dollars in a better way. I always see transformation like this. It's going to be very hard what's kind of coming. However, it's like printing and digital ads, right? Like we are now ideally unlocking money to do more of the things we think we should be doing with our marketing budget. So as I want my CMOs to hold their dollars as best as they can, but think about where we can do more, and let all of these new things that are behind us help power that. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but global to local always is an issue because we're like so limited. And then you like see yourself on a billboard somewhere in, Latin America, and everyone's like, no.
Right. I think that's right. I mean, I think from a creative standpoint, I think maintaining brand consistency is always a huge
That's the right word. Yeah.
Yeah. I think maintaining that brand integrity, getting the buy-in from everybody to just stick with something, stick with a story, stick with a campaign, stick with a palette, build that equity and that value across channels is more and more of a challenge these days. And then I think Lindsey's point about the different markets and about different cultures, the way we used to do it 20 years ago is we would have experts in those markets and we would trust them to translate our brands, and we would talk on the phone and have those calls at 5 o'clock in the morning, and and now we have tools, and we're finding it more challenging. So how do we optimize the tools with that human touch? And I think that's where we might find the sweet spot, like that emotional intelligence with the technical acumen. So
Mhm.
Very nice. And Shena, obviously, I mean, you've worked with brands. Talk about consistency. Some of the brands you've worked with are like
yeah,
the perfect case study for being consistent.
yes. Yeah,
Um,
and that was the job. I mean, that was really, it was held in the highest regard, and I think it was prioritized, and that's why it was possible. And it has to be prioritized, otherwise it's not going to happen.
Yeah. I think also when you look at your agency scopes, it's so important to think about all these things now and what you're asking them to do as the marketer side. Like we want templates and tool. I don't want 6 assets for something. I want 600. I've been saying this probably for a long time, and I know who the teams are that know how to do that. But now it's like, get it together. And I want everything built in tools, right? I want you to build our brand in Frontify. I want Figma templates. I want to integrate it. I want you to know this. I don't want to ask for it. I just don't want to ask for it. I want them to come with their own tech stack and solution of tools because it's required, right? And it's very clear when as marketers, we're shopping a lot for partners. And when one of them does that and the others don't, you very quickly sort of think differently about your teams because they're not on the same level. And
Mhm.
internal is moving faster. I think client side, I always say that the buyers are moving faster and the sellers have to catch up because we
Yep.
look to them not just to like process things for us, but for their expertise, right? And right now, it's like if you are not concentrating your expertise in the right areas, then unfortunately, you're not growing your business and I'm not bringing you into mine.
Well, and I've gone into organizations and been handed a spreadsheet of 30 different agencies. Like, how do you create any
Yeah, yeah,
cohesion of any sort with that
yeah.
kind of setup? So,
Great question, Jen. I think it really depends again on like what the business is. So if you're in the business of driving PR, for me, there's a certain stack versus other things, but there are some consistent ones. Like the most simplest thing is I want notes back after a call immediately. So Granola, whatever tool you're using, I don't want to wait for action items, we're moving fast, right? Like, I just released notes from Cannes on Friday. People were still at Cannes fast because when you're having a meeting or talking about something that's top of mind, like I'm going to go to someone else and talk about it, and you only have so much time, right? So I do think there are some stacks that are out there that are really like no brainers to have, but then they're important to understand what the tools are that you're using to layer on. And that's also a conversation. You can do a workshopping moment with your clients or prospective clients and talk about what things do and how you think they should be implemented because they have workflows as well. But the bottom line is it has to be a part of the conversation. Sometimes I say that project management and the tools part is the most exciting part of a pitch because you're like, yes, I'm going to be informed, organized, and get shit. Sorry, can I say done?
sure.
Get shit done effectively. And like that is so important for leaders. We need things I could go on forever. Sorry, I'll be quiet.
It's great. It's
I need
great.
tools.
yeah. But we also need people who are good at using them.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Jen, the tools for brand assets, most of my clients use Frontify. So
Yeah.
we also use Canva for different things but when you need it like super organized and scaled and you have multiple global markets reaching in and you need something that's premium for great designers, I feel like I'm an ad for you now, Chris, but like,
I know we didn't even discuss it,
but
but
that was before you even reached out to me, of course, it's always been top of mind. I know people use Brandfolder and other things, but it's all about how they integrate too. I don't want to feel walled off from the tools I'm using. And I think Frontify is great at that, especially with Figma. So
yeah,
Yeah.
100%. So that's the initial. We're going to send the report, but we do have a few minutes. I want to make sure if anyone didn't have a question that they want to. Let me just go through real quick. I don't know, Lindsey and Shena, can you stay for 5 more minutes of
yep.
Q&A?
Sure.
Emily, I do think AI is a suitable tool for global adoption. I would look at what Brand Tech Group is doing with Pencil and just maybe watch a video, see what they're doing for L'Oreal. It is fascinating. And it's more than just, that like they're an organized AI, platform that you can work with and also an agency versus several specialized things. AI is so many different things, so it really depends what you're looking for. If you're looking to really help with AEO and LLM reading, and there's different tools you might use like Writer. But if you're thinking about creative and deployment of assets, one of the most important things I look for is if they also have either a connection to like Creative X, or if they're also evaluating the effectiveness of that content, not the efficiency, but those tools understand emotion, if it's all of the different details that help us make better creative decisions.
Great. Well, I think we can end there. I'll wrap up. I want to thank Lindsey, both of you, Lindsey and Shena. Thank you so much. If you have more questions for them, please follow them on LinkedIn. They have great content that they share all the time. I'm sure they'd be happy to connect. That's right? I think that's fine. But yeah, please follow them, connect, reach out to them if you want to learn more about how they can support there. That's it for today. I do want to thank everyone for being here. As a reminder, we'll send the follow-up with all those different resources, the full report, which gets into some of this other stuff here, that some of the questions that I don't think we had time to get to. What else? Let me just get my notes here. Yeah, if you're interested in learning more about Frontify, I'll put that plug in there then. You can visit our website, frontify.com. And then the last thing at the end, there is a little 2-question survey, keeping with the spirit of this survey that we just went through. So if you want to fill that out, it helps us make sure we have better webinars for you next time. But thank you, everyone. Thanks for your engagement and attention here. Lindsey and Shena, thank you so much. I hope you had a wonderful time.
Yes, thank you so much. Bye.
My friends.
Bye, everybody. Okay, goodbye.